But this is too dangerous. This election is specifically too dangerous to throw what I would call like kind of a temper tantrum vote, because as much as you like Gary Johnson or whatever, he's not going to win. You realize that there's no chance that he's going to win. And so essentially what you have a choice of the lesser of two evils, right? And Trump is far too dangerous for your future, for the future of this country, to let him have even 4 years if that's all you think he's going to get. While Hillary has done this before, we have a history here with Bill and Hillary, because people always some people, we loved Bill. Well, how much different do you think it's going to be, really? They both. You don't think that they both make decisions together, or a group, if you will, that have been in politics for a long time. So things will be just fine. I understand you want change, but Donald Trump is not the kind of change that you want. That dangerous sort of rhetoric is totally against all you millennials, all the push that you want to make, for social justice and for rights of blacks, Latinos, for people of color, right? Trump is a dangerous threat to that in a serious way. So while I get you want to make a protest vote, if you really want your vote to matter, realize that you actually may cause Trump to win by making this sort of temper tantrum-like vote.
I know. The decision not to vote is one of the most important issues in this election, I think. That the people that, however they come up with not voting is a very serious threat. As long as people with minds are voting, so you'll be fine.
They are voting, right?
Yeah.
So here's an example, right? Let's say, I'll give you a different example. Let's say there's 10 kids in a basket, and they're going to fall and die, right? They're all going to die in this basket, but there's a switch on the wall. And if you click this switch, right, there'll be another kid who dies. So you'll basically kill that one kid, but you'll save the 10 kids. Well, what would you do in that situation?
Yeah, that's a good.
People say, a lot of people say, well, I wouldn't do anything. I wouldn't do anything because I don't want to influence, the situation. But by not doing that, an inaction is an action. Yeah. Because by not doing anything, you're essentially saying you're allowing 10 lives to die to save the one. Obviously, if you click the switch, you're killing one life to save the 10. But whether you click it or not, you are having an impact on this situation. So whether you vote or not, your non-vote is a vote for a candidate that you don't like as much, right? Yeah. So I get people don't love the two-party system, but that's what we've got right now. So pick one, okay?
I think I read something that my wife said the other day, that I'm pretty tired of people saying the lesser of two evils, because I understand that argument when you come down to really, when you really have run out of options. But seriously, I mean, whatever negative things you can say about Hillary, she's still pretty good, isn't she? She's okay.
So clearly what's happened. So what's happened here, and it's like nobody likes to use this, and she doesn't use this, and she's smart not to. But sexism is playing a role in this environment. I read something today which I thought was really funny, and I'm going to read it to you right here because I got it in my phone. Yeah. This really made me laugh, okay? Because it's so true. When you think of sort of the double standard with Hillary, right? So here it is. It says, imagine a woman who showed up to a presidential debate unprepared, sniffling like a coke addict, and interrupting her opponent 70 times. Let's further imagine that she'd had 5 kids by 3 men, was a repeated adulterer, had multiple bankruptcies, paid 0 federal taxes, and rooted for the housing crisis in which many thousands of families lost their homes. Wait, there's more. She never held any elected office in her life, right?
Yeah, I read that too.
Chance in hell of being where Trump is, right? So sexism has played a role. On top of that, the right has known for a long time that Hillary was going to be next. So Fox News, to their credit, has done an amazing job of creating a smear campaign against her that's created a level of untrustworthiness with her that is unparalleled, right? The email thing, the Benghazi thing, the Clinton Foundation stuff, like these issues that none of which she's been convicted of any crime. In the court of public opinion, she has been very aggressively, right? So she's been backed up into a wall where there's just so much of it has been tainted by, by the media. Rather than the reality and the truth of the situation. Has she lied? Yes, of course. All politicians do. Yeah. They all
that's their job.
But what really frustrates me more is when people say, like, I'm not going to vote for a liar. So you're voting for Trump? He's the biggest liar. He's actually lied more as a candidate than any candidate in history.
Yeah.
He just lies so often that you go, Trump's going to Trump.
Yeah.
What, he lies about fucking everything.
Yeah.
I saw a funny tweet the other day. Someone said, 4 years from now, you know what Trump's going to do? He's going to look into the camera, deadpan, and go, I never ran for president. This guy will say things, blatantly lie, and be like, dude, we have fucking video of you saying this. Yeah, whatever. And he never backs down. He never apologizes for anything.
No.
In any shape or form.
You had a pretty cool president for 8 years. Barack Obama is now stepping down. Is there room for him? Is it possible to use him for future purposes? I mean, because he knows some stuff.
Well, it's certainly so part of Obama's legacy is on the line here, right?
Yeah.
And he's been more active than any actual active president ever in the history of politics, really, to be this active on the campaign trail, for Hillary. He's been riling up his base. He's been trying to gain support for Hillary because part of it, I think, is he's so insulted by the disgusting human being that Trump is. The birther thing, where basically for 5 years after he released his birth certificate, he continued to tell this lie or to continue to push the issue of birtherism and pretend. And when you ask him now, he's like, no, I didn't. We have fucking video. 2016, you dumb fuck. So Obama, I think, takes it very, very personally, this whole thing. And a lot of the progress, whether people want to believe it or not, over the last 8 years, there's been plenty of progress in this country on various fronts. He wants to see that progress continue, right? And clearly, Trump being in office won't be a continuation of a lot of the policies that have helped to stabilize the economy, to have it, back on an uptick, to stabilize the auto industry, to have such a huge increase in renewable energy across the board. There's a lot of good things that have happened. 25 to 30 more million people have health coverage that didn't before. Yes, I understand that a lot of people pay more and they have higher premiums. There's more. He's created more jobs. Yes, I understand that some of these jobs are not as high paying, but it's as though, he can't fix everything with a magic wand. No. He came in a situation where it was a complete mess.
It was pretty bad 8 years ago. Yeah.
The financial crisis, people were losing jobs by the thousands. The auto industry was failing. The country was collapsing. It was like apocalyptic for some people. And it's stabilized, right? We're actually, despite what media will show you and tell you in this country, safer than we've been in 30, 40 years, right? Terrorist acts have occurred in our world, and they're never going to stop, and they're always going to continue. ISIS has done a couple things in terms of ISIS-inspired stuff in this country, and not to minimize the damage they've done, because they have, but what they've really done is they've done a good job of fear-mongering. So I ask most of these people, in your daily life, how much does ISIS affect your daily life, right? For the vast majority of Americans, outside of the fear that they have from watching the news, right? When I when I live here in Las Vegas and I go to a movie or I go to golf or I go, like, how much is ISIS affecting my life?
Yeah.
This is, what a main issue is, economy, climate change is not, for the right, they don't think that even exists.
Yeah.
But there are so many issues that matter to people in a daily life economically that surpass ISIS, but it's so important for Trump and the right to fearmonger. They're coming.
Yeah.
Muslims. Get rid of the Muslims. Like,
I know.
Muslims, or these terrorists that did acts in this country were American citizens.
Yeah, I know.
Law, you keep them out, will do nothing.
One of the things that I thought of during the debate is that compared to the environmental issues, the nuclear problems are bigger. I mean, it's such an old-fashioned thing to say. Of course, it would be terrible if someone dropped a nuclear bomb. Yes, but to not acknowledge the environmental issues, and he totally denies it, doesn't he?
Well, he doesn't believe scientists. Okay, so scientists are overwhelmingly on one side of this issue, in that there is some elements of climate change that is man-made. And this is a real issue that we have a problem with going forward again. So, and we are seeing the effects of it globally. Like Syria, we look at Syria and we see the destabilization in Syria. And clearly, Bashar al-Assad and a lot of the other issues are not just fully based on climate change, but the poverty that's been created in that country is partly related to the fact that their lakes and rivers have dried up and they don't have natural resources and they lack food. They lack the ability to to survive off of what they were, surviving off in the past. So that is one of the most dangerous threats in terms of war. Like, think about it. If America suddenly had a crisis where we were like needing water, well, most likely what we need to figure that out, right? Well, part of that might be go take water from other people, right? To survive. So the climate change and the effects that this has on a global crisis in terms of just the ability to eat, the ability to get fresh, clean water. These are serious issues.
Yeah. It's it's good. Over the 10 years that we've been talking, or 12 or something, when we talked the first time, I think 2005 or something. An interesting issue here is the religious view of yourself. Because I know in the beginning you were quite, I wouldn't say atheist, but towards that direction, but you kind of changed that. What is your opinion today on religion?
I've never been atheist.
No.
In my life. No, I grew up in a family that, my parents believed in God, but we didn't really go to church much. They were Orthodox Christian. They believed, and, I believed, but I didn't really know what it meant. I didn't know much about it. And then when I got married to a woman who was very conservative Christian, and her family was. So I spent probably 2 years studying all different types of religious texts, both pro and against. And there was one specific book that really kind of won me over because it came from logic, right? And it's a book written by an atheist who his goal was to write a book where over the next, 2 years, he would basically disprove God, if you will, right?
Okay.
So and he was a journalist that worked in court cases, and he basically broke it down much like you would a court, case. And after 2 years, he became a Christian. Okay.
Wow.
Because of all the information that he'd gathered. And so he puts it together in a very logic-based way that, he covers, the legitimacy of the text, which is first and foremost, like how legitimate is the Bible in terms of, it being inspired, or like just how much has it changed over time. Then the actual trial of Jesus. And there's one specific thing that really stuck out to me so he had 12 disciples, right? After he was killed, that all 12 of them claim that in that 3-day period, they saw Jesus, okay? And then they were believers, right? Now, those 12 people know that by doing that, because Jesus was not like any of the disciples, they were going to kill them, right? Knowing all 12 of these guys are risking their lives now for this cause. Yeah. Like, would all 12 of them do that if they saw nothing? Like, what will be the motivation? Fame? You're going to get killed, right? You're willing to risk your life for something? Like, something there makes me feel like something must have happened, to inspire them to, first of all, they run and hide. And then they're like, wait a minute, we saw something. So that's just one aspect of it. Today, I still believe in God. I'm a believer, and I always will be. My view of religion has always been this way, but my review of religion is that it's been created by man to separate us, and it's actually mostly evil. Like, really, it separates us because it focuses on rules, passion, love. Like, if you read the New Testament, right, and you looked at what Jesus' life was like in terms of how he lived it, whether you're a believer and he was God or not, he lived a life as like a really good man, right?
Yeah.
He was kind to others. He turned the other cheek. He helped people. He was good to people that were rich, to poor. He lived like basically sin-free. So as a model for life, whether you believed in God or not, the story of Jesus is one that is inspiring.
Yeah.
So I focus on, and Jesus himself in the Bible, and this is what I really focus on, he was against religion.
I know.
He was the one who would walk in. The only time he ever got angry, or there's evidence of it in the Bible, is when he walked into the church or whatever, and there was like markets going on. They were selling stuff. They were gambling or whatever. And he turned the tables over, and he got really upset. And there's one specific story from the Bible where Jesus was eating a meal. He was eating some chicken or whatever, and he just dug in, and started eating. And all the Pharisees at the time, the religious leaders, were like, "Oh, how dare you? It's a sin how you're eating, right?" Because there's a ritual where you have to wash your hands for 45 minutes and do this all right, because that's what's holy. And he says, "You fools, what I'm doing is not unclean. What's coming out of your mouth is."
Yeah.
Right? In the sense that, like, you're focused on all the wrong stuff. And I think religion that focuses on sort of judgment of others in terms of like it's not your position to do that. Like
Yeah.
if you're a Christian, you're not called to judge other people. You're called to love them and be compassionate towards them.
Yeah, yeah.
So the conservative Christian right, especially in America, I feel like really gets that wrong, especially in relation to, the deal, with gays and lesbians, right? Because I always had this thought, like, and I use this example. There was a gay pride parade, right? And you see a bunch of great gays being prideful. And then you see some Christians on the side with signs that say, like, burn in hell, evil, like this. Like, what would Jesus do? And my thought is, based on what I've read, is he would open his arms to the gays, love them, and he would chastise those people speaking on his behalf, calling them fools and saying, how dare you speak for me?
Yeah. That's true.
I don't know this, but that's how I view how things would go. So when someone calls himself a Christian, I really believe in that idea of, like, their fruits will bear. I mean, I can't remember the exact saying, but something about their fruits will bear. Like, you can tell by the behavior of somebody somewhat. Like, does that seem like somebody who is actually Christian or a believer, or are they misguided, or they're just having a bad day? But typically, you can, I think, tell when someone lives by a moral code, and that's not exclusive to Christians. I mean, it's true of Muslims, it's true of Jews, it's true of atheists. Really, whoever has a moral code that they believe in, you can tell who's living by one that is compassionate and outward focused and thinking about others. And you can tell when other people are frauds and fakes in that regard. Like, there's a pastor who's actually a Trump supporter. It's this black guy. I'm like, he's a pastor, and I'm thinking he's the most angry, evil guy I've ever seen. It's just full of hate and anger. I'm like, you're what? You're a Christian? Like, so you just not read the book or something?
What are you aiming for? I mean,
yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. Now, there was if we're looking at poker is something we have in common. There was some World Series of Poker, or World Championship of Online Poker, and you had some success, especially in the end, beating Viktor Blom in the heads up in the horse game, right?
I played 2 tournaments. Was my first one I'd played at WCOOP for the last week, and I was at my draft for the day 2 doing my hockey stuff, and I ended up making the final table. I'm like, wow, I might win this thing. So then I had all my friends, because the draft was over, sweating me while I played, and I ended up getting heads up with Viktor, which it's really funny because me and Viktor got heads up. And on day 1 of the tournament, we were both playing 1K, 2K, 8 game, right?
Against each other, right?
Not just me and him, but it was a full game, and he lost more than I did, but we both came first and second in the tournament and lost money overall, because I won 60K in the tournament and I lost 100K playing in the 1K, 2K game. So it was a win, but I lost 40,000.
Yeah. But I mean, would you say what do you obviously prefer the mix of cash games and tournaments? But how come you didn't play more tournaments during the WCOOP?
Well, because currently, when you're in Las Vegas, Nevada, you cannot play on PokerStars.com. So it required me traveling, and I've got a lot of trips coming up. I'm actually going out next week. I don't know if this is I'm allowed to. I will be there for the One Drop. That is for the amateurs and things like that. I will not be playing, but I'll be coaching somebody.
Really? Yeah. That's an interesting thing. I heard 35 guys signed up for it yesterday. Is that the right number?
I think 35 for now that have signed up. I think it might get up to 40, 45.
What do you think of that they bar the pros?
So any pros that have entitlement issues over this, I want to say first and foremost, look, if Rickard, if you have a home game, right, at your house, you can invite whoever the hell you want to invite.
Yeah.
If you don't want to invite Phil Ivey and Phil Galfond and you don't have to, right? So if you're creating an event for charity where you're raising money, $4 or $5 million for charity, and you want to have an event amongst people who want to play amongst themselves, who are we to say you can't do that? It's just completely, there's like literally no leg to stand on. And I think part of why he's doing it is because a lot of the feedback he's gotten from these millionaires or billionaires who they want to play in this thing. They want to like donate money, but they don't want to feel like suckers.
No.
They don't want to hand it over to the pros. And, pros have no right to this money, right? Like, You don't get to play, you don't get to play. It's that simple. Like, I don't, I would look at it if, for example, they were giving a World Series of Poker bracelet away for that. That would be really just statistically, that shouldn't be the case.
Right.
But and I also don't think, I've always said this, but a lot of them do, like any sort of closed events should not count for all-time money lists or whatever. But, I don't know that will happen with this. And I don't think that matters much anyway. But I think that, Guy is doing something that he believes in for his event. And I see no reason for legitimized anger from anyone who says, "Well, I want to play and I can't play." I'm like, tough luck, bud.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
games that
Arrange your own game. I mean, invite all the other pros and play your own tournament. That's fine. You're welcome to do that.
yeah, good luck with that. See how good of a game you have.
Yeah, yeah. So I read something about that they were one way was to play themselves or to buy someone else in, buy shares in some of the top pros. Now we're going to have a situation where the amateurs are going to play with assistants or instructors like yourself. Is it a secret who you're going to support?
I don't know that it hasn't been made public yet, and I want to talk to people first before I do, because it's a big game. You guys will know who it is. It's, somebody very, very well. Yeah, it's the guy, right? So,
it's a guy well known about in the industry.
So no, I'm not gonna. I'll wait until that happens because I'm actually flying out on the 9th. We'll be on a yacht. Like, I really think like a lot of people are saying, well, who wants to watch a bunch of amateurs play poker? I think the way in which this is going to be filmed, this is the way presented, is going to be much more of a lifestyle type piece, which I do think brings in more players. Like, there's plenty of footage. There's plenty of poker shows on TV with pros and high rollers or whatever who tank and do their thing. There's plenty of that. This is something new and unique and different for a different audience, similar to the duels that PokerStars just released, where they have like Aaron Paul playing against Ronaldo. And they drama, whatever. Like, obviously the poker's kind of silly. Like King 8 against A7 all in pre-flop, big deal, boring. But like they make it so dramatic, kind of over the top and like this real like cool thing. And I think that what people don't realize, relating back to PokerStars, is how difficult of a task it is to bring in fresh blood for these pros to fleece. Okay?
Yeah.
Because the pros are the ones that get a lot of the money. Well, obviously, they get raked too, but these pros talk about games getting tougher and all these kind of things. Well, PokerStars, their agenda essentially is to bring in new people. But if those new people are coming in and having bad experiences, losing their money instantly because they have no chance in hell, it's hard to keep them, right?
Yeah.
So part of where we push them is spin and goes because their money lasts longer, right? Some of them maybe casinos, sportsbook, maybe tournaments, maybe a little bit less cash games because they get destroyed. Like in 2004, if you were a random guy, you knew how to play poker a little bit, and you had $200. You put it in a 1-2 game, right? In 2004, you could play for a couple weeks, probably, maybe. I don't know. You play a little while. You win some sessions. You lose some sessions. You take that same guy today, random guy, put $200 in a 1-2 cash game, have him play 3-hour sessions for a week. I think the odds are he will not win a single session. He won't win because he's so far behind the curve because players are too good, right? So they're very good. So in order to bring in these new people, we have to bring them and entice them to play in games that, won't give them that experience. So a lot of people, were really opposed to the changes we made in terms of the VIP program, which are going to extend even further because they set up a predatory environment. Not their fault. It's not the player's fault. It's the system in itself. When we didn't have the issue because there were so many people coming in, nobody noticed it. It's like, hey, money flying, right?
Yeah.
Eventually, we started to see boom, 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 decrease. We saw some staggering numbers that were like, holy shit, if we don't rectify this soon, this is going to fall out. This like the bottom will fall out and it'll be destroyed. So interesting news is Phil Galfond, who's a very respected player in the online industry, has decided to open up his own site, Run It Once. And I think this is really great on so many fronts. PokerStars could use some help in terms of promoting online poker.
Right.
Because there was a time when they had Full Tilt and they had all these other, companies promoting the game, right? And now the burden has been only on PokerStars, right? Well, Run It Once clearly pick up some of that slack. On top of that, at the very least, I think, whether they're successful or not, I think people will see that some of the claims that PokerStars has made has some validity in that the ecosystem thing matters. Because you think, first and foremost, Run It Once, their core group of players that love this idea are who? Professionals, right? So maybe like a bunch of the professionals go play there. But the question is, how are they going to bring in new players? And what will that experience be like? And how will they level the playing field to make sure that those people keep depositing, right? So it's not an easy task. And I think at the very least, the more competition you have in this industry that goes, whoa, yeah, actually, it's way harder than I thought to bring in new players and keep them for extended periods of time. So like I said, if Run It Once is successful, that's good because we have somewhat of an ally in the sense of like, promoting the game,
Yeah.
promoting the industry. And if they weren't successful, at the very least, pros may have a look at PokerStars and go, okay, we understand. It's all the things that you said, we saw on a microcosm version of it on a smaller site that hold true in terms of the games got too tough too quick, and no one can beat the rake.
No. It's good. I know that. I mean, for if you go back 6, 7, 8 years, there were plenty of different sites that were promoting poker, and there was a healthy competition in a way. These days, it seems like the online casinos has been taking over a little bit. When you look on commercials, anyway. And now PokerStars is also involved with that. Have you looked into that bit of PokerStars?
Well, here's the thing. So PokerStars as a company, we knew this was happening anyway. We knew this. I knew this 5 years ago, and it's funny because there's one. I don't want to badmouth this person, but somebody. Well, I won't say. No. But anyway, put it to you this way. The concept of adding casino and sports has been around a long time in PokerStars. This was not an Amaya creation that was like, hey, let's try this. Yeah. I was in meetings and discussions with the old ownership group where we would discuss these all added verticals, because the truth was there were other online companies that were involved in casino and sports, and a lot of they were doing quite well. So the question was, did we want to corrupt the poker by adding this stuff, or do we want to leave it alone? And the danger is PokerStars has always been a poker company, right? Yeah. That there's purity in that. But on the same token, you're leaving a lot of money on the table as a company by not getting involved in this area. And if people want to play casino games, they're going to play casino games, whether they play them with us or they play them with somebody else, right? So why not? Ultimately, they made the decision to offer that. And I think from a customer loyalty perspective or retention, what I mentioned earlier about the 1 and 2 guy, right, who has $200 and he plays 1 and 2 no limit cash online 6-max, but he's going to get crushed at a much quicker rate than he would if he plays $10 a hand blackjack.
Right.
Right. So while the poker players aren't getting that money, right, the player experience for those people that do want to gamble for entertainment, whether it's poker, blackjack, spin and goes, or whatever, their money stretches out longer when they're not in games that are dominated by pros. And we actually saw evidence of this with the old ownership group, not Amaya, before, where at the very micro stakes, they lowered the rake, okay, to try and what ended up happening was they had to reverse it. Why? Because what was happening was it became too enticing for pros to play the lower limits. And then those, 1 penny, 2 penny players who just wanted to have a good experience were getting crushed by good players. Whereas if the rake is too high for the good players, what you're left with is bad players who are going to lose, right? Yeah. But they're losing less per 100 hands than they would be if the pros were playing with them. So, there's a lot of games where that's true, where the rake is really high and it keeps pros away because they're like, well, we can't beat this. But overall, for the game, it's actually better because pros aren't playing. So nobody's so they're losing the rake money, which is going to be more, but they're not losing as much. They're basically passing the money around,
Yeah.
There's nobody just dominating.
Right,
and that seems counterintuitive, the idea, but think about it, right? If you had a home game, right? Let's say you wanted to play 50 and 100 no limit hold'em, right? And you said you're going to charge $100 rake per hand. Okay. How many pros do you think are going to show up to your game? Yeah. None. How many recreational players? You might get some. You might get some who just don't care about the rake or whatever. And guess what? That game will be juicy as hell. Yeah. So if a pro could actually go, you know what? I'm paying a shitload in rake, but this still might be worth it. Yeah. And this is the case in a lot of private games. In Florida, in California, they play. Some of these guys pay $100, $200 a hand in rake, but there's some pros in the games who go, you know what? I don't really give a shit because these guys are bad. I make like $5,000 an hour.
I was in Barcelona for the EPT, and I talked to Robert Mizrachi, for example, and he told me about comparing the rake in the Casino Barcelona to Bellagio, for example. And he said the rake is maybe 5 or 6 times higher here, but it's fine, And I heard that from a lot of Swedish players as well. They didn't play the tournaments because the cash games were highly raked, but they were so juicy, so they kept playing cash games instead of tournaments.
What that ends up creating, right, which is exactly the ecosystem you really want ultimately, is the good players, the best players, they make money. The bad players, they lose money at a lesser degree. Yeah. The ones that get hurt are the guys who break about even or win a little bit, right? Now they go from winning a little bit to losing a little bit, and they can't sustain themselves. So that middle tier of player kind of evaporates, and you're left with really the best of the best, and then the worst of the worst that can survive a game like that.
Right.
And that's a healthy enough ecosystem, I think. And that was part of the problem. I've seen the numbers, and I know that I can verify that there's some truth to this, in that there was too many players that fit into that role of like basically looking to make 15, 20, 30,000 a year simply by playing 15 to 20 tables, playing extremely conservatively at the highest tier of bonuses, and literally goal of breaking even, not winning in the games, but breaking even. So making the games less fun because less fun because less people playing hands. But they weren't even trying to like win in the natural sense. They're trying to break even. Obviously, they were trying to win. Like everybody wants to win. In such a way that hurt the player experience for recreational players, especially when a guy's 20 tabling. I mean, obviously, one of the ways that you could address that is by limiting the number of tables. Yeah. And I think they should do that personally. Like 6 to 8 is fine. Yeah. So anyway, I lost my train of thought there. Yeah.
No. It's the guy who plays 20 tables. He's kind of destroying the game a little bit. It's almost like a robot, If you have a guy who plays according to his HUDs and he knows exactly how he's playing, it's pretty close to a robot, isn't it?
Well, so I guess the point I was making is like if you get rid of those types of players, in terms of not get rid of them, but stop having them play so much volume, right? So on one sense, people are like, well, you lose players. You're going to have less players, But overall, is that good or bad for the ecosystem and the profit margin going forward? And the decision was made that it's good. It is good for those players to either, play more recreationally or, get better and become one of the top tier players, but not just sort of create a system in which they're being basically incentivized to do this financially by the reward system. So when you take that away, you're left with pros that are really good. You're left with recreational players, and you're not going to have as many pros who are just getting by on reward systems. So a lot of people that hurts a lot of people, right? I know. But part of what they need to understand is that the vast majority and the most important player in an ecosystem is the losing player. Right?
Yeah.
It's not you guys, it's them. Yeah. So you have to do what's necessary to make them happy first, and then as a result, that money trickles down both to Rake and to the players who are good enough to stick around.
Well, one thing that I've been thinking about is that sometimes you look at people who are so upset and is so annoyed about the new rules, and I know this is going to upset a lot of people, but look at the people that are making so much money and they run into kind of a dent or something. Aren't they pretty well off anyway? Aren't they a bit spoiled, these guys that complains a lot?
Well, here's the thing. Anytime you take something away from somebody, they're usually not going to be happy about it. Right. Anytime you give somebody a pay cut or anything along those lines, especially with, with all fairness, in the horrible way that PokerStars did it by really just by just basically like not honoring the second year of what they should have honored in full.
You didn't approve with that.
No, and how could you? That was I still stand by that. I think that was a bad decision. I was really upset about it. I did everything that I could to reverse the decision for 1 year to at least honor the people's, second year of VIP eligibility. I wasn't successful. That was disappointing. But overall, like I understood the need for this. Like I would have done it a long time ago. And the point I was making before was once you take things away from people, they're upset about it. But if you would look at their VIP system now, imagine it didn't exist, the one that they had before, right? Like nothing like that existed. But if you just looked at the one they have now, you're like, man, that's actually really good, right? Compare. Yeah, but when you compare it to something better, which is what they had before, it doesn't look as good. So the mistake really was made, I think, a long time ago when the site was doing so incredibly well, so much new money was coming in, that this didn't seem like a problem, right? But it progressively became one that required a reversal of some kind. Right. And a lot of pros debate, they just want to believe that this is true. They don't want to believe. They think it's a cash grab. They think, this is just them trying to make more money or whatever. Well, but there's not a lot of truth to that in the sense that we knew by making this decision, we were going to lose a lot of Rake.
Right.
Because players that won't be playing as much anymore.
Right.
So we take that hit. We replicate that, of course, by saving some money on not spending as much on the VIP program as a whole. But long term, the goal was to just rip the system to shreds.
Yeah.
The system should be in place. And I remember way back when I was 17, 18 years old and running card rooms, we had systems in place where guess who got the benefits? The biggest sucker in the game got benefits.
Of course.
Losers of the month got free rolls. They got extra chips. They got all this kind of stuff. We didn't give money to the best players.
No.
If it's a house game and I'm going to send a limo for somebody,
yeah.
I'm not sending a limo for Phil Ivey
no.
and John Fonda and Phil Galfond. I'm sending a limo for my buddy who doesn't know how to play poker to make him happy.
That's so true, because I heard someone talk about it, starting a site where the guy who loses gets the best rake back. Like,
oh, right. And so another, to your point, the system that we created was actually rigged against recreational players to some degree, because here's why.
I know.
So if you're a Supernova Elite, you pay. So let's say you're a recreational player that has no VIP bonus, whatever. So you're paying $1 in rake, 100%, right, of the rake, because you're not getting any rake back. Now the guy who's Supernova Elite is paying whatever it was, let's say 50 cents, 40 cents, 60 cents on the dollar. So every hand that the recreational player pays, he's paying $1, and the better player who's better than them at poker and is already going to beat them is paying less to get the opportunity to play with them.
It doesn't make sense.
So it's like, when you explain that to a recreational player who just says, I just like to play on weekends like once a month.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, just know that you're going to pay less rake than the pros who are better than you, who are using HUDs and software and some sort of tracking software or like seat scripting and all these things. Plus, they're getting discounts on how much they pay the site. It's like, huh? What?
It's so sad. Yeah. If you go to a nightclub, sometimes the girls are getting in free and the guys gets in have to pay the entrance fee.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.